Okay, I just will share, I will ask Gabe to moderate with me and just to make a chat and ask the GPs of the Draper Venture Network if they want to ask some question, and to all the public too. And well, I would like to start from the beginning with Hernan and Lisandro. As I told, Lisandro started many years ago. As you see in the presentation, Juan showed some figures in the last 20 years, and we had here like two phases of venture capital and private equity, a very successful one in the 90s that abruptly dropped in 2000, 2001, not only because of the dot-com bubble, but because of our own crisis here in Argentina. And then we started with a new age of venture capital, where I think that Hernan with Kazah is one of the founders of that age. So if you want, Lisandro and Hernan, just talk about yourself, how you started with this, and a little bit of the history of our ecosystem.
The oldest first. Well, thank you, Diego, and really we are hosted here. We are at the headquarters of the National Scientific Technology System of Argentina. So it's a whole sign of the importance that science technology has, I think, towards the future in terms of the future of venture capital in disruptive innovation in Argentina. When Diego asked me to tell about the story, I have to summarize 20 years in 5 minutes, somehow. And I would start saying that in the first event that really was something that we would call a conference of venture capital in Argentina took place in 1991. There were 2 speakers and 10 people in the audience. It was something eccentric, nobody understood what we were talking about. And at that time I had a partner, Carlos Adamo, and we wanted to really foster and push for venture capital and entrepreneurship development in Argentina. And we started. I had completed at that time, I was a consultant with Buzan and Hamilton, a research on South America. And the client was what today is Bancoldex. At that time was the Instituto de Fomento Industrial de Colombia. And the research showed that there were, till 1990, only 1 fund of venture capital in all South America. That was CRP of Porto Alegre, created by the region. It's still alive. I found yesterday night a Gaúcho here, and they are still connecting with CRP. And there was a second case, interesting, very interesting, that was Fundación Chile. And I think that the team that has visited South America now has visited Fundación Chile before. That's a story that really Chileans do not tell very much. But the venture capital concept that was a $50 million fund managed by IT&T in Chile created amazing industries, not in technology, but Fundación Chile was responsible for a hockey stick creation of the salmon industry in Chile, the berries industry in Chile, exporting billions of dollars today. So the whole concept of manufacturing here in this part of the world, something that is a huge opportunity and can create a hockey stick growth, that is what we typically look for venture capital, in Chile showed up very well. They invested also in Sonda, that was a technology company that went public with Intel Capital years afterwards. But there was nothing else. There was nothing else there. And in Argentina we started, and of course, early 90s, 94, our friends from Mexico manufactured the tequila effect. And tequila had a huge impact because the whole market was completely dried in terms of financing, investing for venture, for everything in Latin America. And I kept going and going and going, trying to evangelize with this idea of venture capital and entrepreneurship. And I should quote a very special date, which is in 1997, when two people from East Coast of the US, Yale and Harvard, a lady on the name of Linda Rothenberg and a guy on the name of Peter Kellner, show up here in South America, first in Chile, second in Argentina, trying to create an organization on the name of Endeavor. And Endeavor was about promoting economic development based on innovation, entrepreneurship, and venture capital, which are two of the critical building blocks of what we call an ecosystem. I would add up public policy. Clear Tim Draper in his representation, and as the Israelis that we take as an example, has shown the importance of public policy in helping creating the industry with tax and financing alignments for this purpose. And I would add up that he didn't mention, but having a science technology system that really connects in creating disruptive innovation is key important. So the four components of an ecosystem, in my judgment, are the entrepreneurs, which is perhaps a very scarce resource globally, financing, public policy for alignment, and the scientific system. And Endeavor was, the first Endeavor in the world was created in Argentina. And here I see in the audience that is Maria Eugenia Stensoro, was the first ever executive director of an Endeavor that now is in 30 countries. And Endeavor was a very important mindset creator that this was possible. At that time, early internet times, a guy on the name of Wenceslao Casares, perhaps the Argentine know this name, had a huge impact and created a legend because he was able to create a company that was basically comparable to E-Trade, was the name of Patagon, that was sold to Santander Bank in $700 million. I mentioned yesterday this to Tim. So a guy, an angel investor that put $100,000 in Patagon was able to cash $100 million. This created a boom of excitement in Argentina. And at that time, Hernan Kazah was studying at Stanford, an MBA program with a guy on the name of Marcos Galperin. And they were talking about creating something, well, they didn't mention, but he worked as a summer job in one of my projects, you remember, Talentum, that time. But when he finished his job at 6, 7, whatever, he went to another secret project. We didn't know what this project was about, and this was Mercado Libre. And there were two teams competing head-on. The team of Marcos Galperin from Stanford, and the team of Alex...
I don't remember his name.
Of Alex Oxenford with the remate, that really didn't know from Harvard. So it was a Stanford and Harvard competition that time, head-on, and with a difference, I think, of 1 month or a couple of days.
1 week.
1 week. They started in Argentina, and afterwards Brazil. Well, Mercado Libre was the winner. And at that time, I would say that 3 funds in the late 90s, capturing the internet momentum, were showing up in this part of the world. One of them was the Susan Siegel Fund with Chase Capital Partners. The second was Higgs Muse State and First, and I was manager for the Higgs Muse State and First Fund. And a fund important, Beto Sicupira in Brazil, that financed Submarino. So if you want to see the landscape, of course there were many investors, but the landscape in South America had 3 leaders that were Susan Siegel, Higgs Muse, and Beto Sicupira.
There started the second phase of venture capital, and what about that and your personal history?
So I didn't bring a cheat sheet, and I have a bad memory, so I'll be brief. But yes, we started in 1999 with Mercado Libre. The idea was to replicate what we had seen at Stanford, with all the secular trends that we saw in technology. We thought that those were going to happen in Latin America as well. So we decided to come back from our graduation and start a company here. As is typically happens with the future, it's easy to imagine what will happen, but you will never get the timing right. And that was exactly what happened with us. So we started the company in 1999, and it took us a while to gain some critical mass. I think that we can say that we had a company maybe after 4 or 5 years. Before that, it was still a project that was growing, but was growing from 20 users to 100 users to 1,000 users, but not really with sufficient critical mass, not with financial resources created by its own. So it took a while, but it ended up happening. So we went through that nuclear winter that you described in 2000, 2001, when we had a combination of the drop of the NASDAQ that basically affected technology investments throughout the world, but also everything that happened in Latin America, with Argentina, with the tequila, with lots of crises that we went through in Argentina, Peru, in Brazil, in Venezuela, and so forth. But it ended up being a very successful ride. And in 2011, I decided to leave Mercado Libre and start a venture capital firm with the idea that, again, all those secular trends that we were seeing in other parts of the world were going to keep on happening in Argentina, in Brazil, in Mexico. And on top of that, our experience as entrepreneurs had shown us that there were some investors, not many, but none of those were local, and most of them did not have prior operational experience. So we thought that we could make a difference there, and that's why we decided to start Kazah. Obviously, again, things happened, but slower than we initially thought. But we had a first fund in 2011 that invested in 24 companies that is doing really, really well. A second fund in 2014 that has invested in 20 companies, and a third fund in 2017 that we're currently investing out of it, but we already have close to 20 companies in that one as well. And clear, I think that today, talking about that second wave, we are at an inflection point in Latin America. I think we do have now the critical mass we needed in terms of users, in terms of speed of connectivity, in terms of speed of processing, and many things that were not here a few years ago. And on top of that, I think that we're getting all the capital that we need, right? And last few weeks, we saw Mercado Libre raising almost $2 billion to be invested throughout the region. Our good companies typically used to go to the market and maybe get 1, 2 term sheets. Now they're getting 3, 4 from new names that were not so active in the region before. Lots of Asian players coming into Latin America. We all read the news about SoftBank trying to start a fund dedicated just to Latin America. So I think that we're getting to that inflection point that we all imagined here. Maybe it took longer than we initially thought, but I think it's happening, and it'll probably surprise us with the strength that it will take off.
And before going to corporate with Lorena, I think that a fund manager talks by his portfolio, and I think these two guys has the best companies in their portfolio by far. So if you want to tell about some success story of your companies.
So the most successful company we have in our portfolio is Nubank. It's a completely digital bank in Brazil. Today they have over 6 million active users. It makes it the largest online bank in the world outside of China. It's a company that is very profitable, very cash flow positive. The customer experience is out of the world, is really amazing. The kind of messages that they get from their clients is incredible. It looks like they are talking about their children, not their bank. I've never seen anyone speaking so highly about a bank. And it's all based around a great vision from the founder. Really wanted to transform an industry that was very challenging, very profitable for those incumbents, and also offering very poor service. So it's really a combination that made it very attractive for him, and creating a great team, great technology platform. The company
One
is
of the
doing.
new unicorns that Juan showed in 2018.
The last round was at a valuation of $4 billion. So, and we received offers above that in the last few months. So clearly, I think it's one of those companies that will stand out as Mercado Libre did.
Great. Lorena, what about corporate VC that nowadays is so important here in Argentina?
Yeah. Well, I started doing corporate venture capital 4 years ago, and I started investing in companies in the second wave in Argentina in 2011. And what I can say is that when we started investing, first through Guaira, which is the Telefónica's accelerator seed capital fund, we analyzed the markets, and the average price of a company when sold was around $10–15 million in the region. So the discussions at that time was, is the ecosystem going to grow enough so that we can have a consistent investor and an entrepreneurial ecosystem? So seeing these numbers and this amount of unicorns in Latin America, I think that most of us validated our prior thesis that the ecosystem is going to grow. From the corporate venture capital fund, when we started in 2011, there were, I think that no one doing corporate venture capital. And also Telefónica had a regional strategy to develop a seed fund with an acceleration model, and that was brand new in the region and in the world. Then Telefónica evolved in investing in traditional venture capital funds. They called the venture capital, the Amerigo Venture Capital Funds. And then they created their own venture arm, which was called Telefónica Ventures. From that time to now, here in Argentina, what we can see is an increase in activity in corporate venture capital. It's difficult for me to imagine an industry that is not nowadays being disrupted by technology companies. The telecommunication industry, and now, well, I'm with the Super Biel's fund, which is a financial ecosystem. And I believe that doing corporate venture capital activity can help the organizations to have a different relationship with the portfolio. It's not a traditional partnership. You can have more honest conversations with the partners you want to be and become after investing. And mainly because the established organizations or the incumbents in every industry need to transform their own culture. And having a relationship, a healthy relationship with these kind of companies, it's inevitable to create a shock into the organization and start moving the culture, which is what these kind of companies need. Here in Argentina, in 2017, 15% of the investment in Argentina were participated by corporate venture funds. And in the first semester of 2018, 23% of the investments were made by corporations.
An important part of the total investment of the
Yes,
of the VC
absolutely.
here.
I think that we can count around 20 corporations investing and doing open innovation here in Argentina. And I think there's a lot of value of co-investing and investing in these kind of companies from the point of view of an organization.
Great, thanks. Gabe, it's difficult for me to interview my partner, so I will ask for help.
I will gladly ask Nacho some questions. Maybe I'll first introduce the group we have here that's joining Tim on this visit from the Draper Network. So I manage the alliance that's called Draper Venture Network. We have about 24 independent venture capital funds around the world, much like Draper Cygnus here in Argentina. We have about 30 partners with us today, representing about 15 of our funds. And with our lovely hosts here in Argentina, we were in Chile previously with the idea of really understanding the ecosystem, getting to meet all of you folks, and also getting more time with one another, which is a big, important part of our network, because we do a lot of idea sharing, a lot of deal sharing, and in general, just best practices around venture capital. So that's what the intent of our organization is. And maybe a natural question to you around that is, what was your guys' intention for joining a global VC alliance like the Draper Network, and what do you feel it will do to help not only your fund, but perhaps the general ecosystem?
Well, somehow I had the experience of creating things out of nothing. 10 years ago, well, I started this adventure of, well, proposing an exchange that it was, at that time, probably the smallest exchange in Argentina, and now we are the biggest one. We had no resources, but we had the attitude, and a 100-year-old exchange trusted a couple of guys with just an attitude and a conviction that they can transform and digitize and make it bigger. And well, I gained the conviction that you can create a big transformation with very few resources, and with the leverage of technology, and with a team that is totally committed and really focused on success, and looking on the upside and what is possible, and not the downside. And at a certain point, we grew, and we merged with Rofex, that is the exchange, and somehow it was like a tipping point, and I said, well, I really enjoyed this ride, making something to become big by betting on small market maker and small players, and say, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do the same at a larger scale? And we created a small fund, and with Diego, another small fund, and started deploying spray and pray capital. That's the truth, and starting to learn about startups, about technology in a more diversified way. And well, we had some success, and at a certain point, we met with the guy at Rofex and said, why don't we go for a larger impact? Why don't we do something much bigger? We really think that we can make an impact, we can transform the country, we can inspire other people, we can change the mindset in Argentina. Because it's all a matter of mindset, I believe. As Tim said, is believing, taking risk, aligning risk, and that's the way you transform things in an unthinkable way. Because and somehow the way of thinking that prevails in Argentina is leading us in a constant descent, and we need to make a change. And the leverage we have is technology, and it's the crazy great entrepreneurs we have here. We have the potential is here, and we need to back this. We need to back this, and well, Diego Steverling, who's there, met Tim, and Tim backed us and offered to join the network, and now we are part of this network. We are really proud. Also, the government of Argentina, we won a tender, international tender, and is also backing us. And well, we're really, really thrilled being part of this network. It's like a crowdsourced, it's a different animal. We are learning in an interactive way. I believe that the way knowledge and partnership that emerge, and experiments that we are doing, we are learning at a really fast speed, and there is also a great attitude. I believe we are, when we talk with Tim or with the other partners, we have a really excellent relationship, really open. There is a a great attitude to share and to share this, to share knowledge, to learn from each other. I believe that this is accelerating, and we have the goal to really impact. Now, I believe the network is 24 funds with 2,700,000,000 companies. Now, there is a new fund that is being raised for another billion to help companies to reach a bigger impact. Well, that's what motivates myself and Diego, is the possibility to transform Argentina and the region and the world, and we see that it's possible.
Thanks. Well, we're happy to have you. Can I ask a question to the panel? Yes, of course. So just for our benefit to understand more about Argentina and what's happening here. So Lisandro, you mentioned, Lisandro, you mentioned the sort of four legs of an ecosystem, right? And it sounds like you have the financing piece. There's great funds. There's venture. There's CVC now. Entrepreneurs, at least from what we've met, are fantastic in Argentina, and that's sort of, I think, already known. You talked to in North America as well, that Argentina has, certainly exported a bunch of innovators, and it seems like the government is now, with policy, with investments, it's also getting behind, and there seems to be, and you can let me know more about sort of the talent pool, and you mentioned the universities as well that are a big part of it, but perhaps what's missing in this ecosystem, and what some ideas maybe you have to improve the ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, Argentina clearly has a very strong position in entrepreneurs. We are net exporters of entrepreneurs to Chile, to Mexico, to Brazil, where there is capital. And so the country clearly is not having, in my judgment, because of macroeconomic conditions or whatever, private sector investing, family offices, wealthy families, that we know that Argentina has $500 billion cash outside the country. If some of this money would come to invest in funds, this will make a revolution. And I think that we are expecting for the macro conditions to do this. Family offices are already investing by projects. I see family offices, yes, if you look for $1, $2, $3 million in projects. I have projects in biotechnology that are currently investing $8 million of money coming from family offices in the project. But I see much reluctance in investing in funds. What Draper Cygnus has done, which is very different from Kazah's source of funds, is a major achievement. Having an anchor investor private, which not surprisingly comes from the agriculture sector related business of Argentina, is clearly a major achievement, and Draper Cygnus today, in my judgment, is leading sourcing money from domestic anchor investors. But Argentina has a hub of technology in bio. Yesterday, Ignacio Peña mentioned during his presentation that we have 3 Nobel Prizes in bio, and clearly bio, especially related to agtech, is a strong sector with huge upside, because we have here a fast adoption of technology innovation, and agriculture in Argentina, basically in crops, is world-class, competing in productivity with the US. We have a strong hub coming out from nuclear and satellite. Argentina is the only country in Latin America that has completed the nuclear cycle and that has own satellites launched into the space. The implication of that is that you have applied physicists, mathematicians that easily move toward the satellogics of the world, and for them, robotics is something easy, AI is something possible to do, because you have a critical mass of math and applied physics and bio very strong there. For my surprise, fintech, what Lorena is doing. I read a report last year of Ernst & Young. Argentina comes top 10 in fintech. How is it? And that's because what Tim said before, instability has provoked Argentina to be very wise in how to manage finance. And with the support of central bank innovation in the battle between traditional banking and new fintechs that this government of President Macri really sponsored, Argentina was able to manufacture a critical mass of fintech and blockchain-related companies. And last but not least, is not known in Argentina that this country, second to soybean and crops, is exporting $6.2 billion of software and high value-added services, which is the second export component of our trade. And that implies that you have many companies that can grow up, in my judgment, if you have sufficient financing long-term to invest.
So just want to make one comment. I think that I agree with 98% of probably what Lisandro said and thinks. But there's one point that I'm, maybe I did not understand it well, but I think to be a net exporter of entrepreneurs is a very bad thing. Yeah. You want to have entrepreneurs that stay here, you want to attract global talent into Latin America, and clearly today we're in a better position versus where we were probably 5 years ago, and hopefully 5 years from now we'll be in an even better position. The fact that we're here speaks, money talks, so we're here, we want to invest in Argentina. But I think, going back to your question, everything is there. What is missing? Lots of critical mass, lots of consistency. Hopefully we'll get there. Argentina, I think, is in a good position, but it's no longer kind of the jewel of Latin America. I think we invest throughout Latin America. We just look for the best entrepreneurs, best opportunities across the region. We may make mistakes, so part of that could be our own bias, but we've invested mainly in Brazil, and now we're investing mainly in Mexico. Probably the third country today would be Colombia. So again, we hope that Argentina will take off, but I think we were in a much better position 20 years ago. I think populism affected this country big time. We don't realize that. We are part of another generation, but that generation that was raised during those years got their incentives upside down. Not all of them, obviously, and again, if you double-click and look at the talent, maybe the talent is there, but it created something that was not good. And I think what is happening today to entrepreneurship in Argentina, vis-a-vis what's happening in other countries in the region, is a reflection of that.
Totally true, and we hope that to change. Well, I think that we ran out of time, so I want to say a big thanks to all of you, and very proud to have you here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.